Welcome back into another video. In today's video, we're going to rank how badly Behaviour wants every major license in DBD based on evidence-based speculations. We all know which IPs are the most hyped, but which licenses are most likely from Behaviour's perspective? I mean, there are so many possible horror properties out there, and some are definitely more likely than others. Hey everyone, it's Schmuckles. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. I wanted to announce something real quick. We have the most hyped license killers in 2022 tourney live right now. For this tournament, you can vote for as many licenses as you want. The polls are free and don't require a login. The link to the tournament is in the description below. This Wednesday, I have ACL reconstruction surgery and I'm not going to be able to walk for 6 weeks. So I'm probably going to be taking a little bit of a break from YouTube for the next couple weeks. Anyways, these are the licenses that we're going to be talking about in this video. So the tier list in this video is not the predicted order that these licenses are coming into the game. It doesn't take into account how difficult it is to get the license, which we talked about in this video. So the only assumption that we have for this tier list is assume it's irrelevant for how difficult it is to get the license. Or another way to put it, assume every single license holder is willing. Our tier list defined is ranking how much Behaviour would want each license in DBD from most to least. Some of the considerations we're going to have for this tier list is the property iconic? Does it fit into Dead by Daylight? Is it super hyped? In other words, would Behaviour make a lot of money from bringing that license into Dead by Daylight? And the final consideration is the license's values in line with Behaviour's values and Behaviour's vision for Dead by Daylight? For our S tier licenses, they have to be iconic. They have to have been on the satisfaction survey from 2021. The satisfaction survey is going to be a pretty good indicator of every license that was on Behaviour's radar at that time. There has to be evidence of some sort that it would be a huge license for DBD, and the values have to be in line with Behaviour's values and vision for DBD. And our A tier licenses also have to be iconic. They also have to have been on the satisfaction survey. For these licenses, it's unclear if Behaviour as a company wants the license in the game, but there's evidence that Behaviour employees like the license. And I feel that the fact that these licenses are still off the satisfaction survey, there's still a pretty good chance that Behaviour as a company wants it in DBD, but it's not 100% clear. And there has to be evidence from the DBD community that there's a huge interest in the license. Our B tier licenses are niche licenses that appeared on the satisfaction survey. These are mostly video game licenses or like iconic licenses that aren't necessarily super hyped in DBD, yet they were on the survey. These are licenses like Sadako, for example. Even though it's iconic, it's unclear how hyped the property is for Dead by Daylight. So for the B tier properties, it's unclear if they'd make as much money as a bigger license. Our C tier is the wildcard tier. These are licenses that weren't on the satisfaction survey. This kind of suggests that Behaviour isn't interested for whatever reason. And it's kind of unclear why Behaviour isn't interested in these properties because they're definitely iconic and they're definitely hyped. Our D tier is niche licenses that weren't on the satisfaction survey. Some of these licenses are super iconic, but not necessarily to the young adult target audience of Dead by Daylight. These are licenses that are possible, but not probable. Our F tier licenses have to have not been on the satisfaction survey, and the values of the license are not in line with Behaviour's. So if the license was on the satisfaction survey, that automatically puts the license on B tier or above. And I feel this is justified because we've seen several licenses come into DBD since then, all of which have been from the survey. I'm convinced that Resident Evil was put on that survey for the RE Part 2 chapter, because Nemesis had already been announced for Dead by Daylight at the time of that survey. And I know a lot of people are going to ask me, Schmuckles, where is this license on the tier list? So I just want to address that real quick. If you have a license that I haven't organized into this tier list, it probably belongs in one of two tiers. If it's a niche license from the satisfaction survey, it probably belongs in the B tier. If it's a niche license that wasn't on the satisfaction survey, then it's probably in the D tier. The first property we're going to talk about is the Friday the 13th license. Obviously, Jason's iconic. Leatherface, Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, and Jason Voorhees are the most iconic horror killers out there. Those are the top grossing classic horror franchises ever. So Jason's definitely iconic. Is Jason super hyped, or would Behaviour make money off of this license? I did a most hyped licenses tournament last year, and DBD Leaks did a most wanted licenses tournament last year. Jason placed second in both of those tournaments. And not only that, Matthew Cote has said that Jason is the most requested license in DBD in this interview. Interestingly, at this time period, Matthew Cote didn't say anything about Springtrap. He said Jason was #1. Does Jason fit into DBD? Well, Matthew Cote said Jason has a standing invitation into the game, and we've talked about this in previous videos. He literally carries his victims and kills his victims in the exact same way that the Trapper does. So Jason Voorhees is definitely an S tier license on our tier list. The next license we're going to talk about is Slenderman. Slenderman finished 9th in my most hyped licenses tournament from last year, and he finished 4th in DBD Leaks' tournament. The view count and the amount of interest that I've had from my Slenderman licensing video is through the roof. I think the reason that he didn't place that high in my tournament is because he went head to head with Pennywise early on, and I think that Pennywise might be a little bit more hyped than Slenderman, but it's close. Also, at that time in my channel, I hadn't done a Slenderman licensing video, but I did a Pennywise licensing video, so I'd already kind of attracted Pennywise fans, but not Slenderman fans. It's definitely a very hyped property. It would definitely make a lot of money, but it didn't appear on the satisfaction survey, and a lot of people speculate for why that is. It's really strange. This would definitely be a huge chapter in Dead by Daylight if Slenderman were to ever come in as a killer. I could see Slenderman coming in as a paragraph in the future. The fact that he wasn't on that satisfaction survey, he has to go in our C tier. He's in the wildcard tier, and again, this is kind of a confusing situation because he wasn't on the satisfaction satisfaction survey, so we kind of think he wasn't on Behavior's radar, but it's a super iconic and hyped license. And there's been speculations going on for years because Slenderman never actually touches his victims. And now we have a couple killers in Dead by Daylight that never touched their victims, so people think things could have changed since then, but nonetheless, he's going to qualify in our C tier. The next two licenses we're going to talk about together are Psycho and Silence of the Lambs. These are really iconic licenses that don't seem to be as hyped for Dead by Daylight for whatever reason. These classic killers are almost a similar sort of situation to Jack Torrance, though Jack Torrance was on the satisfaction survey and these two licenses weren't. So even though Psycho and Silence of the Lambs are some of the greatest horror films ever created, they're going to go in our D tier. There's a lot of reasons for this. Obviously, they weren't on the satisfaction survey. For whatever reason, these licenses aren't really hyped for people that are in their teens or early 20s. Psycho's actually my dream license that I'd want to see in Dead by Daylight. Like, it's my #1 license, and then there's nothing else that's close. But honestly, it's the vast minority of people that feel this way about the license. So unfortunately, my dream license and Silence of the Lambs are going in the D tier. Jack Torrance goes in the B tier, which is where he belongs. It's the lowest tier that we have of licenses that were on the satisfaction survey. The amount of hype in Dead by Daylight that I've seen for Jack Torrance is kind of in line with more niche licenses that were on that survey, like The Fly and The Mummy, for example. The view count and amount of interest that was generated from my Jack Torrance video wasn't great compared to the other licenses that I've covered. And I kind of just get the feeling that Jack Torrance, Norma Bates, and Hannibal Lecter aren't really the kinds of killers that people are looking for in DBD. All three of these killers are humans that are psychologically deranged in their own way. They don't have supernatural powers, they don't have a curse. People don't really feel that these kinds of killers that are very human-like belong in Dead by Daylight. At least that's what I've seen in the comments, that's what I've seen on Twitter, and that's what I've seen in my Twitch chat. The Stranger Things license is definitely iconic. It was the second biggest chapter to ever come into DBD. There's definitely a lot of money on the table for Behavior, especially since season 4 of Stranger Things brought in some new iconic characters. And quantitatively, we can also show that it's iconic because my petition to bring Stranger Things back to DBD has now 40,000 signatures. Definitely sign that petition if you're interested in bringing Stranger Things back to DBD. The link is in the description below. Is it in line with Behavior's values and vision for DBD? I'm not really sure. It seems very high odds that Netflix voided the contract the first time that Stranger Things left DBD. So after being treated this way, would Behavior want to just renew the license and act as if nothing happened? I'm not really sure. I mean, Behavior's a multi-million-dollar company. Would they want to work with Netflix again after Netflix kind of burned the bridge like that? There were a lot of people in the DBD community that were upset, rude, or bummed out that this license left. Will Behavior want to go through that hassle again? Based on the King's interview with Matthew Cote, it seems that they're going to write these contracts in such a way that that's not possible again. That might have to be the guarantee going into this deal with Netflix again. So I'm not really sure if this is in line with Behavior's values and vision for Dead by Daylight. I will say that there's a ton of evidence that the employees at Behavior want this license in the game, and that's Matthew Cote included. So I think for these mixed reasons, Stranger Things qualifies as a low A tier license. The next franchise we're going to talk about is Five Nights at Freddy's. Just analyzing the guidelines that we made for this tier list, obviously FNAF is going to qualify somewhere very high on the list, right? Venom Xenomorph's petition to bring Springtrap into DBD has about 68,000 signatures, which is almost double the amount of signatures that I got on the Stranger Things petition. In my Hype Licenses tournament and DBD Leaks' tournament, Five Nights at Freddy's finished first. Five Nights at Freddy's beat out Jason Voorhees, Pennywise, Candyman, all these huge licenses. Personally, I think Five Nights at Freddy's would be the biggest chapter in Dead by Daylight's history if it were to ever come. Maybe a Jason Voorhees chapter would be close, but I still think it's going to be bigger than any chapter that we've seen so far. So if I'm trying to rank how badly Behavior wants the Five Nights at Freddy's license, where this license runs into trouble is to if it fits with Behavior's values. Apparently Scott Cawthon donated to some Republican candidates as well as anti-LGBT supporters. There's a lot of opinions that people have about this, whether this was okay or not. We have LGBT events, charms, and fog whispers that are working alongside Behavior. So Behavior has to be thinking, what would happen if a FNAF chapter ever came into the game? Would they want to face this controversy that could possibly come from the community? I have some LGBT friends that are okay with FNAF and Scott Cawthon's views, and I have some LGBT friends that said that they would not want to play Dead by Daylight if FNAF came into the game. It could kind of create a weird situation between Behavior and their fog whispers, which is a weird situation to put themselves in. A lot of this is just discussing the potential that could happen if Behavior to announce a FNAF chapter. I'm not really sure if Behavior wants this license because of that, but it's hitting the mark in all other places. Behavior created this community around the principles of friendly inclusion and diversity. So would bringing a FNAF chapter into DBD jeopardize that? I'm not even saying that I personally feel this way about Scott Cawthon or the FNAF franchise. I'm just wondering how Behavior would look at the situation. The next license we're going to talk about is Scooby-Doo. According to my most hyped licenses tournament and DBD Leaks' tournament, Scooby-Doo is a very hyped property. It's partially a meme, but I also feel that there's some Swift groups out there that would love to play as Mystery Inc. And remember, for this tier list, we're assuming that the license holders are okay with the property in DBD. So Scooby-Doo is iconic, it's hyped, it was on the satisfaction survey. There's a lot of evidence that people would want the Scooby-Doo license in Dead by Daylight, especially with the Attack on Titan's license coming into DBD with Survivor Cosmetics. Maybe they could do something like this with Scooby-Doo. It's kind of win-win because you're not going to see like people viciously murdering Mystery Inc. You would see killers in Dead by Daylight viciously murdering their own characters in Scooby-Doo Cosmetics. And I really feel that this is a pathway that Scooby-Doo could come into Dead by Daylight someday. Still not 100% sure how badly Behaviour wants the license, but it was on the satisfaction survey and there's definitely money on the table for this. So Scooby-Doo qualifies as a low A tier license. According to my tournament last year, Shaggy Rogers is the most hyped survivor that isn't in DBD yet. The Walking Dead and Alien were both licenses that were on the satisfaction survey. They're both a huge part of the entertainment industry. I think Alien's a little bit more hyped than The Walking Dead, if I'm being honest. Alien finished 3rd place in my tournament and DBD Leaks' tournament. There's no specific evidence showing that Behaviour wants these licenses in DBD. Matthew Cote alluded to the fact that Behaviour Interactive has kind of been debating whether or not Alien fits as a property. This was years ago, but nonetheless, there's nothing conclusive about Behaviour wanting the Alien property in DBD. Same thing with The Walking Dead. There's an ongoing debate whether it fits in DBD if there would ever be a killer from The Walking Dead come into the game. I think at the very least, The Walking Dead would work perfectly as a paragraph. So both of these licenses qualify as A tier licenses. When talking about these more niche video game licenses, a lot of them got the same results in DBD Leaks' Most Wanted Licenses tournament. And they're generating about the same amount of interest when it comes to view counts on my videos and my license tournament that's live right now. They're pretty big licenses, like I think they'd be well received by the community. All these licenses have also been on the satisfaction survey. For the Dead Space license, there is evidence on Twitter that some of the Behaviour developers like this license and want this license in the game. We have people following EA on Twitter. A lot of the Behaviour developers are following the Dead Space Twitter in general. The Last of Us was made by the developers Naughty Dog, and we have a lot of Behaviour employees following Naughty Dog on Twitter. And actually, when analyzing these videos, my BioShock licensing video got the most views out of any of the licensing videos for these franchises. All of these licenses are going to qualify as B tier licenses on our tier list. I can't really put them any higher than that because all of our S and A tier licenses are just much bigger licenses in comparison to these video games. I've also found that Predator and the Nun or Valak from The Conjuring are pretty similar hype-wise. Both of these licenses appeared on the satisfaction survey. And when it comes to the tournaments, both of these licenses performed similarly to like the video game niche licenses that we saw. So therefore, these two licenses are also B tier. The Thing was on the satisfaction survey as well and performed pretty well in these most hyped licenses tournaments. Based on everything that I've seen on Twitter, it still doesn't seem to generate the same amount of hype as like the really big licenses. And I haven't seen too much of the Behaviour developers saying anything about The Thing. So this is going to qualify as a B tier license just because it was on that survey. Until Dawn wasn't on the satisfaction survey. I haven't heard developers talk about Until Dawn too much. I still do see some comments asking me to talk about the Until Dawn license. This is actually going to qualify as a D tier license on our tier list. The Creeper from Jeepers Creepers wasn't on the satisfaction survey. Despite the fact this killer is very well designed, there's a lot of controversy surrounding the creator Victor Salva, which we've talked about in multiple videos. I would speculate that right now in 2022, the Jeepers Creepers license is just too risky for Behaviour to even take a chance on. They'd get so much backlash for supporting Victor Salva in any way. And there's even been statements made by devs before saying this is not a license that they're pursuing. And then it didn't appear on the satisfaction survey, so this is actually an F tier license. I think that Jeepers Creepers might be one of the least likely licenses that we'd ever see come into this game. Candyman is a super iconic license, always performs well in the most hyped licenses tournament. People like when I talk about Candyman, and there's always like Candyman theories circulating around. I don't think it's as big of a license as say like Jason Vecna or Springtrap. Matthew Cote did say at this time period from this interview that Candyman was the second most requested license in DBD. And this is something Behaviour probably knows internally, so they know that it's super hyped, and therefore I think that Behaviour knows that this chapter could make a lot of money. Personally, I think that Candyman's backstory and values are in line with Behaviour's goals. Everyone knows that the story of Candyman is to expose social inequalities that are happening in the inner city environments. Behaviour is all about inclusion in a diverse cast of characters in Dead by Daylight. So this is actually hitting the mark in all the right places, and Candyman's going to qualify as an S tier license. Pennywise is also an S tier license. Matthew Cote has openly admitted that Behaviour has tried to pursue this license and failed. So right there, we already know that Behaviour really wants this license badly. When it comes to modern day licenses, I think that Pennywise and Vecna are the two biggest movie and television properties out there. Just based on all the evidence, Pennywise has to be S tier. And the final license we're going to talk about in this video is Chucky. Chucky wasn't on the satisfaction survey, and even though Matthew Cote and other Behaviour employees have kind of vouched for how Chucky could work in DBD, it's not clear to me if Behaviour as a company would like this license in the game. Like, they could have just decided that this license isn't going to work in DBD. Maybe we'll get it someday, but it doesn't seem to be on Behaviour's radar right now. The fact that it didn't appear on the satisfaction survey, Chucky is going in the C tier with Slenderman. So this is our final tier list. What do you think of my picks? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to vote on our most hyped licensed killers 2022 tourney. The link to my Twitch, the Stranger Things petition, and the polls are all in the description below. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. That does it for this video. Goodbye.